Hello everyone, I'd like to take a few minutes to show you how you can work smarter, not harder, by taking advantage of timers in BPM workflows. Now all timers have two primary characteristics. The first of these is period, and this is probably the most commonly used trigger type. In this situation, we wait a period of time after the prior step completes, in this case step 11, to execute the next step. And this could be of various units, days, weeks, and years, etc. There's also the ability to set a date, an explicit point in time when the trigger executes and moves on to the next step. For example, October 10th would be the date we have set here. In this case, we can also, if we combine these two types of settings, such that we could say from October 10th, we want to wait 2 days into the period of time after that date, or 2 days before October 10th, we want to go on to the next step, in this case, step 13. It's also important to note that these values can be either explicitly set or driven by variables from prior steps in the workflow process. There are basically two types of timers. The first of these is the intermediate timer, and probably the one most commonly used. It simply moves the process forward based on the timer settings from one step to the next. The second type is what we call a border timer, and there are two subtypes of this. The first is the non-stop border timer. In this case, once a step is reached, the timer then runs based on its settings. Doesn't matter what happens at step 11 in this example, the process will automatically start the timer once it reaches that step. So this is a good example of where you might want to use this for a notification when that step is reached, because you really don't care what happens at the step. You just want to notify someone that it has reached that step in the process. This step also has the additional benefit of being able to be repetitive and brings forth a third type of timer setting. So you can set the number of repetitions you want this border timer to execute once step 11 has been reached. So maybe you want to make multiple notifications to make sure that somebody is aware that the process has reached this point, for example. The second type is called the stopping border timer, and this actually interrupts the process. So when step 11 is reached, the timer begins to run. The difference, of course, here is based on the timer settings. If the timer reaches its setting value before step 11 is completed, the step is interrupted and the process moves forward to another point in the logic of the workflow procedure. So regardless of what occurs in step 11, if it hasn't been completed, it will be interrupted and the process will move forward to another step in the process. An interesting feature of border timers is they can be combined against a step in the process to create very complex responses over various timer settings as needed in a workflow process. Let's take a quick look at the experience of working with timers in the system. Here we have a simple intermediate timer, and we can deploy this timer in the flow and just to see how we can work with it. Now, in this example, we're just using the swim community to promote a message after the timer runs. So we run the process once. In this case, we're going to send a notification about a new customer that's been accepted, and the customer won the process, so it'll send a message to swim. Now we can monitor the timer here. In this case, we notice it was set for 2 days. And if we look at the details while it's running in test mode, we can see that indeed it's coming about at a certain date and time. Now we don't want to wait on that if we're obviously testing the process. So what we can do is simply execute it and force it to complete, and we see the message appear in swim. Now this is great for a single, but if you have multiples, you can also set the timers in the process to run in 5 seconds times. So here in this example, we'll run the same process again. In this case, we'll say a company called Mumbo is going to win our contract, so it'll send that notification again when the trigger runs. In this case, all we have to do is wait 3, 4, 5 seconds, and we'll see the process complete, and the process will continue forward, making testing much easier when you're working with timers.
Thanks for watching. For questions, connect with us in the ENOVIA user community.